Hello, my name is Joshua. I'm continuing the video on this Deep Ridge channel. I'm to the end of the month video. It's a new year, it's 2022. Hope you all had a great New Year's Day. And I am recording this again because the first time I tried to record this, I forgot to switch my camera around. So here we are, I'm re-recording it. Hopefully, I'm not depressed. Let's just get into it. So the first thing I watched this month was the Beatles Get Back documentary on Disney Plus, directed by Peter Jackson. 3-part series. It's like 9 hours or something, isn't it? It's pretty long, but it is a really good documentary. I'm not the biggest fan of the Beatles. I listened to like a few of their latter albums, but I wanted to see what they were like in the studio, and this documentary really shows it. It's a really good documentary. It's funny at times, it's emotional at times. It deals with like the band splitting up as well, and obviously that rooftop performance at the end was very iconic. I do think the visuals are kind of dodgy at points though, because you can tell they've tried like AI upscaling the footage and that, or like smoothing it over, and it just looks dodgy at some points. Apart from that, it's a really good documentary. I give it a 9.5. And then I watched the Solar Opposites Christmas special. I watched season 1 and 2 earlier in 2021, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun series, very funny, and this special is very good as well. It has very funny references to Christmas films like Jingle All the Way and like It's a Wonderful Life and that. Very funny. I give it a 7. And then I decided to get a bit experimental, and I decided to watch random episodes of The Simpsons. Well, not really. I looked up every season of The Simpsons in the digital era, which is season 14 onwards, and I looked for every single episode that was rated 7.5 or over, and I put that all down onto a list, and I basically watched all of those episodes because I wanted to appreciate modern Simpsons more, and I did enjoy most of them, to be honest. I'll list them all off now. So I watched Treehouse of Horror 13, Mo Baby Blues, Treehouse of Horror 14, Don't Fear the Roofer, The Seemingly Never-Ending Story, Mock the Chef, The Wife and Her Homer, 24 Minutes, Eternal Moonshine of the Simpson Mind, The Departed, The Bookshop, Holidays of Future Past, A Totally Fun Thing Bart Will Never Do Again, Still This Episode, Brick Like Me, Treehouse of Horror 25, Simpsorama, Halloween of Horror, Bart Hood, Flanders Ladder, The Way of the Dog, The Last Bar Fighter, A Serious Flanders Parts 1 and 2, and A Maid Maggie. Pretty sure that's like 24 episodes there, so it's around the length of a normal Simpsons season. Flanders Ladder was probably my least favourite. It included really forced internet humour, and it was really dated even for when like the episode came out. Like it was referencing the Scary Maze game, and then Bart says epic sister fail. Epic sister fail! But I really enjoyed episodes like Holidays of Future Past, which I think could have been like a perfect emotional send-off for The Simpsons if it didn't continue to go on for another 100 seasons, like till we die probably. I probably won't rate this because I'm mixing and matching. I'm not like reviewing a season or anything. I just thought I'd mention that I did this. Then I watched Die Hard. This was a really fun film. Everyone says that it's supposed to be like the best action film of all time, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun film. Obviously iconic characters, John McClane, obviously Hans Gruber, iconic villain. It's very intense and suspenseful action throughout. I like how John McClane's like isolated in this tower with like, all these bad guys in it, and his only communication is through like a walkie-talkie. It's very suspenseful and very scary at times. I also like John McClane's one-liners as well. He's always like saying one-liners throughout the film. Saying that, I think it's a film that will like grow on me over time, and like when I first watched this, I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to, but over time and after seeing like the sequels, I've really appreciated it much more now. So I'd give this film a 9.5. Then I watched the sequel, Die Harder. This is a pretty good follow-up to the first film. This one takes place in an airport now, and it has quite a different premise as well. Saying that, I do think the thing what made the first film so great was that John McClane was like isolated, because John McClane has like support now, like he actually interacts with people. So I don't think this film is as good. So I'd give it an 8. And then I watched Die Hard with a Vengeance. I really love this film. This was really funny. I really enjoyed it. It's probably the funniest out of the Die Hard films I watched. I really love Samuel L. Jackson in this film. He's a really good companion to John McClane, and it just has some really fun action in this film. I like how Hans Gruber's brother is like the main villain of this film as well. It's very interesting. I think the original Die Hard film is the better made film, but I think I enjoyed this film way more in my opinion. So I give this also a 9.5. And then I watched Live Free or Die Hard. Sure. This film was really watered down in my opinion compared to the last three films. Obviously because this one was rated like PG-13. The violence is toned down, the language is toned down, and John McClane just doesn't feel that realistic anymore. It like feels like it's unstoppable. It just feels really different to the first three films. The action scenes feel really like generic as well, just constantly cutting all the time, shaky cam, and there's so many shots in this film which like are so clearly overdubbed as well. Like half of this film is just shots of the back of people's heads. It gets kind of annoying after a while. I don't really care for the villains as well, like the hackers. So I give this film a 7. It's decent. Actually, no, I'll give it a 6.5. And then I watched a fan edit. This is the first fan edit that I'm reviewing on this channel, but I've watched a few fan edits before. I'm quite a big fan of like fan edits and that. I'm quite an avid user of fanedit.org and originaltrilogy.com. So I watched M4's fan edit of The Hobbit. I watched the original extended trilogy in 2020, and for the most part I found it to be okay. The pacing was literally all over the place though. It just had really boring subplots, some really over the top action, some really cartoonish action for like Lord of the Rings films. The Battle of the Five Armies, the battle went on for way too long. This edit, it improved on a lot of things. It tightened up a few things. It got rid of subplots which I didn't like at all. The main focus was on Bilbo Baggins, which I want the story to be. I don't want it to go off to Dumbledore fighting with like Radagast or whatever. I don't care. Apparently this edit's supposed to be closer to the book. I haven't read the book, but I will say that some scenes feel a little bit too shortened in my opinion. Some aspects of it work for the better, but some bits mess up the pacing in some points for me. But the pacing was much worse than the original, so I'm not complaining. There's some great editing work in here visually as well. There's some CGI used to like remove stuff and add stuff to the scenes. There's also use of deep fakes as well in this edit, which I haven't seen before. So this edit is very ambitious and I really appreciate it for that. So overall, this is a great improvement on the original films. So I'd give this edit a 8.5. And then I watched Bad Boys for Life. I watched the first two films. I've heard they're supposed to be bad because it's Michael Bay. I went and watched this film and I enjoyed it for the most part. I love Martin Lawrence and Will Smith's chemistry in this film. It's really good. Some of the humour in this film is really good. I will also say that the cinematography is really good for like an action comedy as well, but it is tonally inconsistent at some points, like to the point of hilarity, like when Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are having a jogging race and Will Smith like ends up winning or something, and then the Spanish guy on the motorbike comes down and guns Will Smith down, and then it cuts to a scene of Martin Lawrence like crying over Will Smith's supposedly dead body, and it's like it like switched tones like completely. Also, I don't really care for the villains. They're like generic in my opinion. I didn't really care for the third act when they were like fighting against them and that. It was pretty forgettable for me, but the humour was really good and I think that's the thing that saved it, so I'll give this film a 7. And then I watched Candyman 2021. Pretty good remake, I really enjoyed it. The cinematography is really unique and interesting in this film, and it also has a really unique soundtrack as well. Very interesting soundtrack. This film has a lot of racist themes in it as well. The first film did, but this film like ramps it up a lot, and I think it dealt with it really well. I really like the kills in this film as well, especially that one in like the exhibition. It's very creative, like the Candyman like only being seen in the mirror. It's much more of a slow burn as well than the original. Saying that, in the third act it was really like it really ramps up and the pacing like gets all weird, and I feel like they were rushing to get to the end in that third act, but for the first two acts were really solid. So I'll give this film 7.5. Oh, okay. And then we get to Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a really good film. It's like an amazing fan service film. I just loved it so much. I knew Toby and Andrew were going to be in it. I also knew Daredevil was going to be in it because leaks happened, but I still really enjoyed it, and there were some things that I didn't expect to happen. Everyone's talking about Willem Dafoe's performance of Green Goblin in this film as well, and it is amazing. I love that scene where Spider-Man's fighting with Green Goblin through his apartment block, getting punched. It's just so amazing. amazing to watch. It's really just amazing seeing all these actors reprise their roles in general. Sandman, Lizard, Doc Ock, Electro, just all these amazing characters. I like how much Peter grows in this film as well. It's not like Homecoming and Far From Home where you felt like he had lots of support and everything. In this film, he gets everything taken away from him basically, and he like feels a lot more like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man at the end, with like him getting that apartment. It's not as good as Spider-Verse, but it is pretty close in my opinion. It's just a 10 out of 10 film in my opinion. And then I watched the comic book film Dredd. I didn't really know what to think going into this. It looked interesting, it was on Netflix, so I just went and watched it. And it was a really solid film, it's a really solid action film. I really enjoyed Carl Urban, Billy Butcher himself, playing the lead role as Dredd. And I really enjoyed the woman who can like read minds and that and get to people's heads. They're both really interesting characters. This film feels like really dirty and gritty, especially with like Mama. She like has black teeth and she has greasy hair. She's not nice to look at all. The action in this film is really good. I like the cinematography in this film. There's some really interesting choices. It also has a really interesting soundtrack as well. Very like techno inspired. It's just a really unique film in general. I give it an 8. And then I watched No Time to Die, Daniel Craig's final film as Bond. This was a really solid film. I really like Rami Malek's villain in it. He was really interesting and very scary as a villain. He was kind of overshadowed by the whole Spectre thing again, which I don't really care about. I didn't really care about it in the Spectre film, and now they've brought it over into this film, and yeah, I think they did a really good job at sending off Daniel Craig's character, with him being stuck on that island and him being poisoned and that already. But yeah, it was a really emotional send-off. All around, I thought this was a pretty solid film. I would give it an 8. And then I watched Gremlins 2, A New Batch. I watched Gremlins 1 back in like January or something. And this was a really solid film. I would return to the original characters of the first film. Obviously Gizmo returns, Christopher Lee is in this film as well, playing this like scientist guy. It's really fun being introduced to all these new characters as well. There's some really funny characters in this film. And then you go past the 1 hour mark where the gremlins start like wreaking havoc on the tower block and things start getting like, it gets really crazy. There's so many references after this bit. There's like Phantom of the Opera reference, there's a Batman reference, there's a Rocky reference, there's a Rambo reference. And then you also have the Gremlins. All the Gremlins are like different in this film compared to like the first film where they all looked physically the same. There's like a talking gremlin, there's like gremlins with guns, there's a bat gremlin. There's also a random Hulk Hogan cameo in this film, and then Hulk Hogan like randomly breaks the fourth wall. It gets so weird. I thought Gizmo would like play a bigger part in this film as well, but he's always off to the side in all of these scenes. All around, this is just a fun time, it's a crazy time, it's a wacky time. I'm gonna rate it 7.5. And then I finished watching Hawkeye. I really enjoyed this series. It really made me appreciate Hawkeye's character much more as an Avenger, because he's usually overshadowed by the other Avengers. I really enjoyed the relationship between Kate and Clint. It's really funny at times, it's very emotional at times. I like how it comes to like a good conclusion for both of their characters at the end of the finale. Saying that, the finale was a bit underwhelming. First of all, Kingpin returns from the Daredevil series. He's wearing Hawaiian t-shirts. I just feel like he's overly invincible in this show as well. In the Netflix show, he had like body armor and that. In this show, he literally gets hit by a car and he doesn't feel anything. I also like the other villains in the show. The Tracksuit Mafia, very funny at times. But I didn't really care for Echo though. But it didn't feel like her character like did anything in the show that much really. Well, apart from kill Kingpin. All around, this is a really solid show. I really enjoyed it. I'd give it a 7.5. And then for Christmas Eve, I watched A Christmas Story. This was a really fun Christmas film. I really enjoyed it for the most part. Very funny film. The child actors in this film were really fun to watch. I really enjoyed the parents in this film as well. They were really funny, and I like how they contrasted each other a lot in points, and it's really funny to watch. This film is not big at all in the UK, I don't think. It's very big in the US. But as a UK citizen watching this film, I really enjoyed it. I also liked how like the adult version of Ralphie was voicing over this film as well, and it didn't feel like you were overwhelmed by children because of that really. But the standout of this film has to be the daydream sequences. They were just so funny. It's just one of the best Christmas films that I've watched in my opinion. It might be better than Die Hard. I'm going to give it a 9.5, but it might be better than Die Hard. And then for Christmas Eve, I decided to do a double feature with Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. I've obviously watched these films 4. I watch them like nearly every Christmas. The first film is one of my favourite Christmas films of all time. Kevin McAllister, really funny character. Macaulay Culkin is such a good child actor, and he's just so funny in this film. I like how he randomly breaks the fourth wall as well. It just has a satisfying and heartwarming conclusion, and the last quarter of this film is iconic with the booby traps. I do like to see a good injuring of the Harry and Marv. So overall, I'll give this film an 8.5. Really solid Christmas film. I watched Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. This is a really good follow-up. It does copy a lot of things from the first film, but I think it has so much of a spin on it that it doesn't feel like a copy of the first film. Kevin isn't home alone in this film. He's alone in New York, and obviously it's on a much bigger scale than the first. One thing that's really good about these films as well is the score. Just really iconic score as well. The parents are kind of stupid. Obviously they left Kevin again. They managed to do that again. Like, you think they would have checked like their alarm clock a bit more carefully this time or something. I absolutely love Tim Curry in this film. He's just so funny. The way he pronounces words and that is just,
A limousine and a pizza. Have a lovely day.
It's just the highlight of this film for me. I do feel like the pacing is like off on this film though. Especially when Kevin meets up with that bird lady. I just feel like the film slows down a lot. Also, the chances that Harry and Marv would meet in the exact same point in time, at the exact same place in time, is not very likely. But I do think the booby traps in the last quarter of this film are really good, and I think they're actually improved over the first film in my opinion. I'd give it a 7.5. And then for Boxing Day, I decided to watch a boxing film, Creed. I really enjoyed this film. I really enjoyed Michael B. Jordan as this new character introduced to the Rocky franchise as Apollo Creed's son. Obviously Rocky returns. I felt like this is like a follow-on to Rocky Balboa, with like the fact that Rocky is going to Paulie's grave now as well as Adrian's. I like how it deals with his age a lot in this film, with him like developing cancer and that. I feel like some of the lines Rocky says in this film are really moving as well. I really enjoy the cinematography in this film as well. It feels very different to the other Rocky films. I would give this film an 8.5. Really solid addition to the Rocky franchise. And then I watched Creed 2. I don't think this film is as good as the first, but it's still a really solid film. I really enjoyed the relationship between Adonis and Bianca in this film. I think it's improved from the first film, obviously because they get engaged in this film and they have a baby. I like how Drago returns in this film now with his son, and that creates a lot of conflict between Creed and Rocky, and that this still deals with Rocky's age and that, and yet it's still a very emotional thing for Rocky. I'm worried that this series is going to like end with Rocky dying or something, but all around this is a really solid sequel. I would give it a 8. And then I watched the Steve Martin comedy Bowfinger. This is a really enjoyable comedy film, obviously starring Eddie Murphy playing dual role again, which he's famous for playing. He plays Kit Ramsey as well as Jiff Ramsey. I really enjoy Jiff as a character. He's really funny. Kit Ramsey, I like how he thinks like aliens are coming to Earth and that, because like people are talking to him weirdly and that. Obviously because this director's trying to record a film without him knowing, which I think is a really interesting concept for a film. There's also some really big like names in this film as well, like Robert Downey Jr. and Jamie Kennedy. One thing I think I'll complain about though is like the third act. I think it's kind of mean-spirited, but this is a really solid comedy film nonetheless, so I'll give it a 7.5. And then I watched the comedy film Yes Man, directed by the Ant-Man director Peyton Reed. I've watched a lot of Jim Carrey and Eddie Murphy films in 2021. I've already watched this film, I'm familiar with it. I used to have it on DVD, I used to watch it a lot. I really enjoyed this film. It's a really great romantic comedy, really fun concept. People are saying this like rips off Liar Liar. I do think Liar Liar is the better film because Jim Carrey just does like an amazing performance in Liar Liar. Like the scene where he's fighting with himself and that. But yeah, this is a really enjoyable film. I'll give it a 7. And then I watched the Sacha Baron Cohen film Brüno. I watched Borat and its sequel a few years back now. I really enjoyed them. They're really fun comedies. And this film was really enjoyable as well. I really enjoyed the concept of this like mockumentary style, but it's actually in the real world. It's so amazing how like Sacha Baron Cohen like doesn't break character when he's like playing these roles. It's just amazing how he manages to like get like deep into these characters, improvise and everything. This film like tries to one-up Borat with like being way more outrageous and way more offensive, and I think sometimes it goes too far. Some things don't land that well, but when it works and it's really funny. The thing is, with Borat, it works all of the time. Brüno isn't as an iconic character as Borat, but he is really entertaining as this German gay guy. That ending in the wrestling ring, to know that all of these people are real as well, it's just like, there's some really awful people in this film. All around, this is a really funny film though. I would give it a 7. So that's all the films that I watched in December. I'm currently watching The Book of Boba Fett. I watched episode 1 last week. It's a very enjoyable series so far. I like the character of Boba Fett and he's really entertaining in the show so far. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. If you didn't, please leave a dislike, and I will see you in the next video.